Alright, so the Halo show is out, and there's been a good amount of speculation on it if it's going to be any good. Thanks mostly to the people making it saying they never even played the game. Well, that and the awful Cortana reveal. Well, dear viewer, I'm glad to report that while the first episode of Paramount Plus's Halo series isn't exactly a triumph, it isn't exactly the dumpster fire it very easily could have been either. The show begins on Madrigal, basically dime store Tatooine, where a group of rebels with stupid haircuts are all just hanging out, doing rebel stuff. Oh, and they've got AK-47s. Damn, these guns have been around a long time. Anyway, we learn that the UNSC are actually kind of the bad guys here and have been stealing the resources from the planets they control, and hence the whole rebellion thing. This is an interesting take on the Halo universe and not something we really got into until Halo 4 and Halo Reach. If you didn't bother with any of the older Halo games, don't worry, they do a pretty good job of catching you up. Now, cut to Kwan, the main character. Her and some of her friends are out rebelling, like teenagers do, when some familiar bad guys show up, the Covenant. Now, here's something pretty surprising. They went ultra gore with the visuals. Even to this day, Halo games don't have gore so that they can sell them to little kids. So it's kind of a shock to see people's legs getting vaporized out from under them as they try to run, and children being gunned down by Covenant elites. Enter Master Chief, who arrives just in time with a few other Spartans to help the rebels. Why don't they just let the rebels get wiped out since they're, the enemy? Don't know, but we get a pretty decent action scene here, and the Chief is just as brutal as the Covenant, as he executes enemies gangland style with magnum shots to the face. Several magnum shots. There's some nice nods to the game here with the sound of his shields charging up. He even picks up the minigun to shred some Covenant like fresh Parmesan. Why does that gun work when Chief uses it, but not when the rebels were just firing it a few minutes earlier? Who knows, but the point is it looks really cool. So the dust settles and Kwan is the only survivor. She loses everyone close to her and wanders after the Spartans, even though she's been told her whole life that they're ruthless killers, her mortal enemies, but hey, whatever. I guess they tried to help when they were getting their asses kicked, so, maybe they can now be friends. And probably she's like, screw this, I'm not bearing all these bodies. Cut back to the Spartans, and they found the Covenant ship parked above a cave. Inside, it would seem they found a mysterious MacGuffin the Covenant were after, and without thinking, hey, wait, this could be something dangerous, Chief just reaches out and grabs it. I guess that's one way to find out if it's some kind of weird rock that melts people who touch it, but whatever. But no, it doesn't melt him, it does something else I won't spoil, and that'll set us up for the second half of the episode. Kwan, meanwhile, who followed them, gets knocked out by an escaping elite, but is then rescued by the Chief, who takes her back with him to Reach so they can analyze the weird rock they found and, I guess, question Kwan. The show cuts away here to both the Covenant Citadel of High Charity and to the command center of Reach. We get a nice little bit of exposition of what each side is up to. The Covenant clearly want the humans dead for some reason, and it would seem they've even recruited one of their own to do it. The humans, meanwhile, are embroiled in internal politics, but their top brass seems to know that if they can't convince the rebels to stop, rebelling, then humanity could be wiped out in the war to come. Enter here a familiar face, Dr. Halsey, the genius scientist who created the Spartans. Now, I'll say I feel like they give away a bit too much with Halsey here, as she's just so clearly up to some shady shit, whether it's the Spartans or clones or whatever other experiments she's cooking up. She's a bit too, yeah, I know my creations might be something from a Black Mirror episode, but we can use them. She's basically a Dr. Oppenheimer-like figure, and while she can make useful stuff for the humans to use in their war for survival, her intellectual arrogance and desire for power make her someone you can't entirely rely on. I just hope she gets more development as the show goes on and doesn't just play the shady doctor lady archetype for the whole time. Cut back to the Chief, and he and Kwan are on their way back, and for some reason, they order Chief to kill her. I know this is sort of spoilery, but it's just something I have to bring up because it doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't you interrogate her since she's an enemy combatant? Wouldn't she know tons of stuff about the rebellion? I mean, her dad was a general, but whatever. There's also this brief exchange between Kwan and the chief where she confronts him over the death of her mother, who died at an insurrectionist meeting that the chief and some other Spartans showed up at to try and shut it down, but then they got ordered to shoot everybody. It's a little hard to believe the chief would just start gunning down unarmed people, especially women, but that's what they're asking us to believe. What's stranger here is that Kwan isn't furious at him. If I were in the room with the guy that, killed my mom, I'd probably be a little more upset about it. I mean, shouldn't she hate the chief? Maybe she thinks he's just a mindless killing machine with the strings being pulled by the UNSC, but this exchange here doesn't really work and it would have been better left out, in my opinion. So here the chief has a change of heart and decides he's not going to let them kill Kwan, which, is fine. I guess he finally realized after touching a magic rock that killing unarmed people is bad, I guess. There's just one problem. The ship is on autopilot and they're about to land. They will need to put aside their differences and work together to escape. And that's really the meat of the episode. I think the show has some potential. It'll just take a few more episodes before we really know if we've got something decent on our hands here. I will say concerns about Chief being sidelined are overblown here. He still takes center stage and doesn't feel overlooked in his own story, at least so far. Kwan is the audience's perspective, and we're going to learn about the world from her as she tags along with the Chief. I will give the writers credit here for not shoehorning in any cringy politics. Kwan isn't some super soldier doing backflips over Covenant elites, firing 2 SMGs as doves fly through the air in slow motion. She spends most of the episode terrified, her face splattered with her friend's blood. She does a decent job in the role, not anything special, but not awful. The same can be said for the rest of the cast. I am cautiously optimistic about the rest of the series. It may not be gripping television, but so far it's risen above some of the barely watchable Halo productions of the past. These are basically high-budget fan films that don't really say or do anything interesting with the source material. I don't think we're in for any big surprises with this Paramount show, but I'd be happy to be wrong. At the very least, we get to see Sierra 117 stomping some Covenant faces, and that is pretty entertaining usually. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. If you would care to, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as those things are a huge help and will encourage me to make more videos. Until next time, game on.